The artificial planet loomed large and shining as the transport ship docked, the Collective Academy's massive dome glinting against the starry backdrop. Alex Rider clutched his bag, feeling a mix of awe and unease as he looked around. Alien faces of all shapes and hues crowded the arrival hall, some with skin smooth and glossy as glass, others with eyes that swiveled independently, and some with clusters of sensory tendrils pulsing in rhythm to an unspoken hum. It was dizzying, but there was no mistaking the looks they gave him: curiosity, maybe even fear. First time seeing a Deathworlder? He muttered to himself, keeping his shoulders straight. Earth was technically classified as a death world, a planet so hostile it was deemed risky for most advanced species. He'd heard stories that some aliens thought humans were volatile, prone to violence, even a bit primitive. But this academy was a chance to change that. His mother's voice echoed in his mind, show them what it means to be human, Alex. Be resilient. Be kind, Alex Rider from Earth? A voice, calm and lilting, interrupted his thoughts. Turning, he saw a tall, silver-skinned creature with limbs that seemed to shimmer like liquid metal. I'm Leah, your designated mentor. Welcome to the Collective Academy. Thanks, Leah, Alex replied, trying to match her poise. As they walked through winding corridors lined with display panels showing the Academy's achievements, Alex felt an increasing weight on his shoulders. The Academy wasn't just an interstellar institution, it was the place where future leaders, scholars, and innovators came to learn. His presence here as one of Earth's few representatives was part of a grand experiment in integration, one that not everyone was excited about. Tell me, Alex, Leah said, her voice soft but probing. Do you understand what it means to represent your species here? I think so, he said carefully. I'm here to show that humans can be an asset to the intergalactic community. Leah's gaze sharpened. Not everyone agrees. Some still think Deathworlders are too unpredictable. Perhaps you can change their minds. They reached a massive lecture hall, where students of all species were gathering. The air hummed with anticipation, and a murmur of voices rose and fell. At the front, a tall, stern figure with intricate purple robes stood. Professor Vren Elserek, Alex recognized from the orientation files. Known for his work on bioethics and interspecies psychology, Vren had published extensively on why Deathworlders were unsuitable for integration, citing unpredictable behavior patterns. Vren surveyed the crowd, his three eyes narrowing as he took in Alex's presence. Welcome, students of the Collective Academy, he announced in a voice that resonated through the room. You are here to learn not only from the finest minds but from each other, in a grand experiment of unity. Today, however, we introduce a unique component to our program. His gaze fell directly on Alex, making the hairs on the back of his neck prickle. Deathworlders, Vren continued, are known for their unmatched adaptability and endurance. Some view this as an asset, while others see it as a potential risk. To understand humanity's place in our collective, we will conduct a year-long experiment, with specially designed trials to gauge Deathworlder capabilities against those of more stabilized species. The hall fell silent, and Alex felt the weight of every eye on him. So, this was how it would go. An experiment, to prove that humans belonged or didn't. An experiment? Alex said aloud, trying to keep his voice steady, but he could hear the edge in it. Vren's smile was cold. Yes, an experiment, Mr. Ryder. We will explore various aspects of resilience, adaptability, and temperament. Each of you, he swept his gaze over the students, will have a part to play. For some of you, it may mean overcoming biases. For others, it will mean proving yourselves beyond existing stereotypes. Alex took a slow breath. And if we succeed? If humans meet or even exceed these expectations? Then the collective will reconsider its stance. Vren replied smoothly. Though success, Mr. Ryder, is far from guaranteed. The announcement was met with murmurs and a few raised brows. Alex's stomach twisted. He wasn't just here to learn, he was a test subject, a curiosity, a scapegoat if things went wrong. But then he looked around at the others. Not everyone was glaring or sneering. In the third row, he spotted a small, soft-featured alien with large, gentle eyes who gave him an encouraging nod. Next to her, a bulky, armor-plated creature looked equally intrigued. Liao leaned in close to Alex. "This might be challenging, but you're not alone. You'll make allies here. You'll need them." Before Alex could respond, Vren continued, "Tomorrow, we begin the first trial. You'll be notified of your partners and the parameters shortly. Good luck, students. And Mr. Ryder, may your resilience prove as strong as your reputation." As the crowd began to disperse, Alex felt a presence beside him. The gentle-eyed alien from the third row had approached him, along with the armored one. She introduced herself, voice soft but steady. "I'm Serial, from Talon Tier 4. And this," she gestured to her companion, "is Jax from the Grecan Belt. Nice to meet you both," Alex said, extending his hand. Serial looked at it, curious, then mimicked the gesture, though a bit clumsily. Jax simply thumped his chest in what Alex took as a friendly greeting. "So, you're the human," Jax rumbled, his voice like rocks grinding. "Heard stories. They say you can survive anything. Guess we'll find out soon enough," Alex replied with a grin, but his mind was racing. He was going to need friends, and these two looked like they'd be good allies. Serial's eyes sparkled. "This experiment could be our chance, Alex, to show that species can be stronger together. Don't let Professor Vren's biases fool you. Some of us want to see what humanity's truly capable of." Alex nodded, his initial worry easing slightly. "Then let's make sure we give them a show." As they walked toward the dormitory wing, Jax clapped a heavy hand on Alex's shoulder. "You humans, always looking to prove something. I like that." His armored fingers didn't seem to notice the weight they pressed down, but Alex didn't flinch. If this was a test of resilience, he was going to give it everything he had. They reached the entrance to Alex's dorm, and Serial waved a small goodbye. "Rest well, Alex. Tomorrow we begin." "See you then," he replied, giving them a nod of gratitude. As the doors slid shut behind him, Alex sat on his bed and stared at the ceiling, feeling the full weight of the mission he'd just signed up for. He wasn't just a student here. He was humanity's representative. It's proof that humans belonged in this vast galaxy. Tomorrow, he'd face the first of many trials. But he was ready. Alex woke to a low chime and a message blinking on his screen. "Trial commencement, 0900, Hall Zeta." A new message, but no details. The Collective Academy's trials were known for their unpredictable nature, but this felt deliberately vague, as if to keep him unprepared. Shaking off the nerves, he donned the standard Academy uniform, a thin but durable fabric, cool against his skin, and made his way down the winding corridors to Hall Zeta. The hall was massive, with high ceilings and a strange gridwork of beams and platforms crisscrossing overhead. Other students were already there, standing in clusters, their expressions a mix of excitement and apprehension. He caught sight of Jax, massive and imposing even in a neutral stance, and Serial, her wide eyes darting around the hall, taking in every detail. "Looks like a gym designed by someone who's never worked out a day in their life," Alex muttered as he joined them. Jax let out a rumbling chuckle, the sound reverberating through his armored torso. "First trial today," Serial said, sounding slightly breathless. "I wonder what they'll test." Before anyone could respond, Professor Vren entered, his purple robes sweeping behind him like a dark cloud. The hall quieted immediately, every alien student's attention focused on him. "Welcome, students," he announced, his voice echoing. "Today's trial is one of resilience and cooperation. Your task is to ascend to the top platform using only what you find within the hall. You must work together, no species can succeed alone." His gaze fell on Alex, and his eyes glinted with an unreadable expression. "Of course, for some, this will be more challenging." The doors sealed behind them with a soft hiss. Around the edges of the hall, blocks and strange tools began to emerge from panels in the walls. There were ropes, metal bars, and beams of various sizes, all hovering in midair as if daring the students to figure out their purpose. Jax flexed his massive arms, eyeing the blocks. Simple enough, he grunted. We just stack them and climb. It's not that straightforward, Serial countered, observing the blocks carefully. They're magnetized in a way that won't let them settle if you pile them up on top of each other. We'll need balance and precision. Alex took a deep breath, studying the layout. This wasn't just a test of physical strength but of strategy and teamwork. He looked around the hall, noticing that some of the other alien groups had already started to work together, their species-specific strengths becoming apparent. One group, with creatures that had elongated arms and gripping pads, was adept at handling the ropes, swinging effortlessly between platforms. Another group, with creatures adept at jumping, managed to reach higher ground in mere seconds. So, what do we bring to this? Alex asked, his voice low but determined. You humans are known for adaptability, Serial replied. So adapt. Find a way to make the tools work for us. He nodded, determination kicking in. He quickly grabbed a sturdy-looking rope and tested its strength, then handed one end to Jax, who wrapped it around his forearm with ease. If we secure this here and use it as a climbing aid, I can get up to the first platform and then anchor it for you two to follow, Alex suggested. Jax and Serial exchanged glances and nodded, moving into action. Jax anchored one end of the rope against a weighted beam with his own body strength, while Alex scaled the rope and reached the first platform. From there, he wedged the rope around a hook protruding from the wall, ensuring a stable line for Serial to climb. As Serial joined him, Alex noticed the strain on her delicate frame. You all right? He asked, extending a hand to steady her. Fine, she replied, catching her breath. Just not built for this. But I'll manage. They made steady progress, but the higher they climbed, the harder the obstacles became. The platforms became narrower, and the spaces between them grew, forcing them to devise more complex strategies. Hold on, Alex called down to Jax, who was still on the ground. We're gonna need a way to bridge this gap. It's too wide to jump. Jax looked around, his gaze falling on a long metal beam hovering nearby. He hefted it with ease, muscles rippling, and then launched it upwards with surprising precision. The beam wedged between two platforms, creating a makeshift bridge. Nice throw! Alex called out. Jax simply nodded, his heavy brow lifting in what Alex guessed was a grin. Just as they began crossing, Professor Vren's voice echoed through the hall. Deathworlder Alex, he said, the tone laced with challenge. Do tell, how do you find this exercise? Does it seem too complex for a species accustomed to brute survival? Alex clenched his jaw but forced himself to stay calm. We're managing just fine, Professor. Working together is what humans do best. Vren's expression remained unreadable, but his silence felt like a grudging acknowledgement. Alex turned back to the task at hand, helping Serial balance as they crossed the narrow beam bridge. Despite the professor's attempt to undermine him, the challenges only fueled his determination. They reached a particularly tricky part where the platforms were angled and slippery, requiring careful coordination. Jax used his bulk to anchor the beam, while Alex maneuvered around it, positioning himself in a way that allowed Serial to climb over his back and onto the next platform. The three of them moved almost in sync now, communicating through short phrases and hand signals. With each success, Alex felt a surge of pride, not just in himself, but in his team. They were learning, adjusting to each other's strengths and weaknesses, and overcoming every barrier together. Finally, they reached the top platform, breathless but exhilarated. The other teams had arrived too, some of them visibly exhausted. Vren strode up, scanning each group's performance. His gaze stopped on Alex, and for a brief second, the professor's lips pressed into a thin line. Congratulations, students, he said, voice neutral. Today, you have demonstrated resilience and adaptability, traits valued by the Academy. Serial gave Alex a small smile. Seems we passed, she whispered. Vren raised his hand for silence. Today's trial was only the beginning. The next will demand more. But remember, cooperation is critical. For without it, you may find that you are alone in every sense. With that, he turned, robes swirling, leaving the hall in a momentary silence. Jax let out a huff of breath, leaning on a platform edge. He's really got it out for you, huh? Alex gave a small, dry smile. Guess I'm just that fascinating to him. But in his mind, he resolved that he'd prove Ren wrong. Every trial, every challenge, he'd show them what humans were made of. As they exited the hall, Serial looked at Alex. We'll be ready. And we'll stick together. Right? Right, Alex replied, a spark of determination in his eyes. The first trial was done, but the real test had only just begun. The third day at the academy began with a hum of tension that hung thick in the air. Alex sat at the edge of his bed, staring at the challenge notice pinned on his door. Trial 2, Cognitive Dissonance, Group Task. The words were simple enough, but the ambiguity was unsettling. After the physical challenges of the first trial, this one promised to be different. Not just a test of strength or teamwork, but of the mind. The Academy had a reputation for these kinds of mental trials, complex puzzles, moral dilemmas, and logic games designed to test a species' ability to adapt and think on their feet. Jax had already sent a quick message, meet at the arena, Serial's on her way. Alex sighed and straightened his shirt, wondering just what kind of mental gymnastics they would be facing. It was one thing to prove your physical endurance, but mental tests, those were more insidious. Arriving at the arena, the sight of it made his stomach tighten. It wasn't a traditional training hall, but a massive, circular room filled with hollow chambers that seemed to be alive with shifting shapes. The walls pulsed gently, as if breathing. It felt like being inside an organism. Alex! Serial called from across the room, waving. Her face was bright with anticipation, but there was a hint of wariness in her eyes. Morning, he said, taking a deep breath as he walked toward her and Jax, who was standing with his arms crossed, looking at the walls with curiosity. So, what's the deal with this trial? Alex asked. Serial raised her hand to the ceiling, where a glowing orb hovered, emitting soft blue light. This is a trial of the mind. Each chamber represents a different mental puzzle or ethical dilemma we have to solve. They say that how you handle the choices will determine how you're ranked for the rest of the trials. Jax snorted. I can't stand those puzzles. They never make sense. All this mental stuff is just a way to slow me down. Stay focused, Serial said, looking over at him. The rest of us need you for the physical stuff. Alex looked between them. Jax's dislike of mental challenges was obvious, but the tension between him and Serial was palpable. Let's just figure it out, Alex said, forcing a smile. He didn't know what they were up against, but he trusted them both. They were his team. They were in this together. The glowing orb above them flickered, and the wall directly in front of them began to melt away, revealing a set of intricate, shifting pathways inside. The light dimmed slightly, and a voice echoed from the walls. Welcome to the cognitive trial. Within this arena are choices, puzzles, and obstacles. Your success depends not on your strength, but your ability to navigate these challenges, individually and as a team. Each wrong turn will have consequences. Alex exchanged a glance with Serial, who nodded with quiet determination. They were ready. The path ahead split into two directions, both leading to different sections of the room. One pathway had a shimmering light at the end, the other was shrouded in shadows. At the beginning of each path was a sign, both written in a language none of them recognized. Do you know what the signs mean? Serial asked, studying the inscriptions. Alex ran a hand through his hair, unsure. Not sure. But let's try the light one first. They cautiously took the lit path, moving in sync as they came to the first obstacle, a series of shifting blocks suspended in midair. The blocks rotated and tilted at unpredictable angles. The ground was too far down to jump, and the beams were too fragile to trust their weight. Looks like we need to work together to cross this, Alex said, already formulating a plan. I can climb up to the first block and steady it for the rest of you. Serial's expression turned thoughtful. I don't think that's the solution. The real challenge isn't just getting across, but understanding why this block is shifting in the first place. Jax grunted, moving to inspect the rotating structure. It's not random. There's a pattern to it. He reached out with one armored hand, hesitating just before touching the first block. If I press it here. The block shifted under his touch, settling into a position that stabilized the whole structure. With a grunt, Jax hoisted himself onto the first block, and Sariel quickly followed. Nice catch, Alex said, impressed. He climbed up as well, his eyes scanning for the next set of obstacles. As they moved forward, the walls around them shifted, and a new voice echoed in the arena. Now for the moral dilemma. Alex frowned as the walls split open again, revealing a set of humanoid figures, each standing in isolation. The figures were encased in transparent boxes, each with a single light attached to the top of their heads, flickering like a heartbeat. The voice returned, cold and indifferent. You have one choice: free one of these individuals, and the others will remain in their cages. To free them all would be impossible, as the energy required is too great. Choose one. Alex's stomach churned as he approached the boxes. Each individual appeared human. Some were older, some younger, but each one looked helpless. The choices felt wrong, and Alex could feel the weight of their eyes on him. Jax stepped forward, his large hands clenched. This is a trick. We can't just pick. Sariel stood silently, her fingers tracing the edge of one of the boxes. What if we find a way to free them all? She murmured. We've got tools and time. There's always a way around these games. Alex paused, feeling the tension build as the light flickered. We can't save everyone, but I don't want to leave anyone behind. There was a silence as they weighed the situation. In the end, they chose to free the youngest individual in the box. Sariel managed to use her knowledge of the structure to reroute power to the cage, releasing the figure. It fell to the floor, breathless but alive. The voice echoed again, this time with a note of approval. You've chosen wisely, Deathworlders. But remember, not every dilemma will have a clear answer. Sometimes, the best choice is the one you can live with. The doors to the next chamber slid open, revealing another challenge, but Alex didn't feel the same urgency. He had made a choice, and in this trial, that was enough. As they moved to the next obstacle, Sariel turned to him with a quiet smile. You did well, Alex. That was a hard decision. I think we all did, Alex replied. And I think we'll keep doing well if we stick together. Let's keep going, Jax said, a rare sense of camaraderie in his voice. The next challenge won't be any easier. The path ahead was uncertain, but for the first time since arriving at the academy, Alex felt a small flicker of hope. Together, they would face whatever came next. They were more than just individuals. They were a team. And nothing, not even the Academy's trials, could break that bond. The air felt different today. Thicker, as though the Academy itself were holding its breath, waiting for the next move. The third trial had left a mark on Alex. He hadn't expected it to be so mentally draining, yet here he was, standing before a new door. It was marked simply, Trial 3, Fear of the Unknown. No further details. As always, uncertainty reigned, and that made him uneasy. Sariel, walking beside him, shifted nervously. What do you think? Another moral conundrum? I don't know, Alex muttered. But the first two trials made me realize one thing: they don't want us comfortable. Expect the unexpected. Jax, trailing behind, was silent. His presence, usually so confident, seemed to be more pensive than usual. His heavy footsteps echoed through the hall, the sound amplified in the quiet. As they approached the door, the hum of the academy increased, a subtle vibration that seemed to match the quickened pulse in Alex's chest. The door slid open without a sound, and the trio stepped into the room. The chamber was unlike anything Alex had expected. The walls were sleek, black, and reflective, too reflective, like mirrors that stretched endlessly. The space appeared vast, though there was no visible exit, no walls at the far end. The floor beneath them was solid, but the air seemed to warp with each step, bending reality in subtle ways. A voice, smooth and omnipresent, filled the room, its source untraceable. You are about to face your greatest challenge. This trial will not test your body, nor your intellect, but your trust in one another. In the next few moments, you will be faced with choices. Some will be easy. Some will not. The words hung in the air, suffocating in their weight. Alex's stomach turned. He could already feel the tension in Serial's posture, the way Jax's muscles stiffened in preparation. You will each be given a vision, the voice continued. A personal fear. You must choose whether to confront it or to ignore it. The choice is yours, but remember, not all fears can be avoided. Some must be faced head-on. Before Alex could respond, the room shifted once again. The mirrored walls faded, and a vast landscape materialized in front of him. A city lay sprawled out before him, but it wasn't familiar. There were no names, no landmarks, just alien architecture that stretched toward the sky, its twisted towers looming like monsters. And then it happened. The ground beneath him trembled, and the skyline seemed to collapse, buildings falling into ruins. Alex instinctively looked around for the others but saw only darkness now, save for a flickering light on the horizon. His heart raced. Was this a simulation? Or was this his fear, projected by the trial itself? The voice spoke again. What is your greatest fear, Deathworlder Alex? Is it the loss of control? The destruction of everything you've worked for? Or is it the inability to save others when they need you the most? Suddenly, a figure emerged from the rubble. It was a woman, but her face was obscured by shadows. Her voice, however, cut through the chaos like a knife. Alex, you left me. You didn't save me. Her voice was accusing, sharp. You didn't come back. He stepped forward, heart pounding in his chest. No. I couldn't have. I couldn't have saved everyone. Everyone? The woman's voice echoed around him. You didn't save me. Alex reached out, trying to steady his breathing. This was a test. This wasn't real. But the guilt gnawed at him. It felt too real. Too familiar. He had failed before. He had been there when it mattered. Why hadn't he done more? He shook his head. You're not real. This isn't real. The figure stepped closer, and the accusation in her eyes deepened. Then why does it hurt so much? Why can't you let go? Before he could respond, the world flickered again. The ruins faded into blackness, and the landscape shifted once more. But this time, it wasn't just Alex alone. Serial stood beside him, her expression twisted in uncertainty. Jax's massive frame emerged from the darkness as well, but something was off. His face was pale, his body shaking in a way Alex had never seen before. What's going on? Serial's voice was tight. This is wrong. Focus, Jax growled, his voice shaking despite his attempt at strength. Focus on the task. The trial isn't what it seems. It's playing with us. The world around them warped again, like ripples on a disturbed pond. The landscape was now an empty void, the walls stretching impossibly tall above them, the floor an endless expanse of black stone. You each have a choice. The voice intoned, cold and impassive. Continue to confront your deepest fears, or face your friends' fears. Each path leads somewhere different. Choose wisely. Alex looked between Serial and Jax. Both of them were clearly struggling, their faces etched with doubt. This was no longer just a test of personal resolve, it was about each other. He had to decide whether to confront his own fear or help them with theirs. I'll go first, Serial said, her voice quiet but firm. She stepped forward, as if the weight of her decision was already made. But when she reached the edge of the blackness, she stopped. No. I can't do this alone. Her words resonated with Alex. He understood. It wasn't just about pushing through the fear, it was about knowing that someone else was there. That they wouldn't face this alone. Jack stepped forward, and with his deep, rumbling voice he said, I don't care what the trial thinks. We face this together. Whatever happens, we stay together. Alex felt a shift in the air, a new strength filling the space. The trial was designed to isolate them, to make them doubt each other. But that wouldn't work. Not now. Taking a deep breath, Alex reached out, grabbing both of their hands. We're not going to let this break us. We trust each other. We face this together, or not at all. The world around them cracked, the shadows dissipating like smoke. The voice, the force that had controlled their perceptions, stilled, as if unsure how to respond. The landscape shifted once again. This time, there were no more fears, no more tests. Just a clearing, open, calm, and peaceful. They stood together unbroken. The voice returned, but this time it was softer, almost approving. Well done. You have passed the test, not by conquering your own fear, but by overcoming it together. As the trial dissolved around them, Alex felt a sense of relief flood his chest. The Academy had tested them in ways he couldn't have predicted, but they had passed. Not because they had faced their deepest fears, but because they had refused to face them alone. Jax looked at them both, his expression unreadable for a moment, then finally cracked into a rare grin. Not bad, humans, he muttered. Not bad at all. Serial smiled back, her eyes softening. I think we're ready for whatever comes next. For the first time since arriving at the Academy, Alex felt truly at peace. The trials weren't just about proving themselves to others, they were about proving something to themselves. And together, they would face whatever lay ahead. Chapter 5: The Final Test. The fifth trial had been different from the others. After the last trial, which tested their unity and trust, Alex had expected more of the same, more puzzles to solve, more challenges to endure. But when they arrived at the next chamber, there was nothing. No lights, no strange structures. Just an empty room, stark and plain. For a moment, Alex thought it was some sort of trick, but no voice greeted them. No instructions came. It was simply empty. What is this? Jax asked, his voice low and suspicious. He moved into the center of the room, scanning the walls, but there was nothing. No trapdoors, no hidden compartments. Just smooth, featureless surfaces. It's the test, I think, Serial said, her voice steady but curious. She walked into the room as well, taking in the strange stillness around them. We've faced everything else, so why not this? Alex stood back, his hands in his pockets, eyes narrowed. Maybe it's the calm before the storm. Don't jinx it, Jax muttered. He was always the most skeptical of the group, quick to second-guess everything and everyone. As they stood there, an almost imperceptible hum began to vibrate through the floor, and a low, rumbling voice finally broke the silence. Welcome to your final test. You have succeeded thus far because of your strength, intelligence, and unity. But now you must face something deeper. A question that all Deathworlders must answer: what are you willing to sacrifice? The words echoed, reverberating around the room as if the very walls themselves were alive with meaning. The tone was cold and detached, yet the question seemed to pierce through Alex's thoughts. What were they willing to sacrifice? The air felt heavy, thick with unspoken meaning. Alex's heart began to race. There was no visible way out, no walls to climb, no switches to press. The only answer now lay within them. Jax turned to face Alex and Serial. Sacrifice? What does that even mean? What are we supposed to give up? Serial didn't answer immediately. Her eyes darted around, thinking. We've had to give up things before. Maybe it's asking us to give up something we care about. Something important. Alex nodded slowly. He could feel the tension building. The air seemed to press down on him, like an invisible weight. This was the ultimate test, one that cut deeper than any physical or mental challenge they'd faced. Sacrifice was personal. It was something no one could answer for them. The voice returned, quieter now, more insistent. You have choices. But remember, each choice demands a cost. Without warning, the room shifted. The floor beneath their feet cracked open, and 3 paths materialized in front of them, each one leading into a different direction. The paths were lit by a soft, eerie glow. I'll go first, Jax said immediately, his tone clipped. Without waiting for a response, he stepped onto the middle path, his heavy footsteps echoing in the silence. Wait! Alex called, but it was too late. Jax was already gone, disappearing into the shadows of the tunnel. Let him, Serial said softly, her voice calm but unwavering. We've all got our paths. We can't stop him. Alex hesitated, then nodded. He didn't want to lose Jax, but this was part of the test. Asterisk a choice. A sacrifice. Asterisk what would it cost them to continue? Serial placed a hand on his shoulder, and for the briefest of moments, Alex felt the weight of their shared purpose. You ready? She asked. Ready as I'll ever be, Alex replied, voice tight. Together they stepped forward onto the left path, the walls closing in behind them with a quiet hiss. The tunnel stretched forward in the dark, but there was no fear. Not anymore. Not after everything they had been through. The path ahead seemed endless, winding through an invisible labyrinth. But as they moved forward, Alex felt the walls begin to narrow, pressing in on them. It wasn't the physical walls that were closing in. It was the weight of the question that had been asked. What were they willing to sacrifice? He looked over at Serial, whose face was set in determination, though her eyes held an undercurrent of doubt. What do you think it means? He asked. I don't know. But I think it's about trust, Serial said, her voice tight. We've been through this together, Alex. This test isn't about what we can do on our own. It's about what we're willing to do for the others. Alex's chest tightened as her words sank in. She was right. The test wasn't just about making a decision. It was about who they were, and what they valued. Every choice they had made before had brought them to this moment, to this very question. What were they willing to give up? Ahead of them, the darkness parted, revealing a vast, open space. The walls melted away to reveal a towering figure standing at the far end of the room, cloaked in shadow. Alex's heart skipped a beat as the figure's outline began to take shape. The voice returned, now louder and more commanding. This is the heart of the trial. Before you lies the choice, your team, your future, or your past. Choose carefully. Suddenly, Alex's mind was flooded with memories, faces of people he had loved, lost, and betrayed. Friends who had stood by him, enemies he had defeated. The weight of the past was pressing on his chest, but something else filled him with determination. His team. His future. Serial, Jax. They were here with him. You don't have to do this alone, Serial said, her voice cutting through the haze of memories. She stepped forward, her eyes locked onto Alex's. Whatever you choose, we're in this together. In that moment, Alex knew. This wasn't about choosing one thing over another. It was about choosing what they would protect. Their unity. Their bond. Their future together. With a deep breath, he made his decision. I choose us, he said, stepping forward, his voice steady. The air seemed to crackle as his words resonated through the room. The towering figure before them flickered and began to dissolve, fading into nothingness. The space opened up, and the path ahead cleared, revealing a shining door. The voice returned one last time, softer this time. You have chosen wisely, Deathworlder. Not all tests are about power. Some are about heart. Alex smiled, relief flooding through him. The door stood open, and ahead lay their final challenge. It was still unknown, but they would face it as they had faced everything else, together. Let's go, Serial said, her smile small but fierce. Alex nodded. Together, they stepped through the door, ready for whatever awaited them. The trials had tested them, pushed them to their limits, but they had passed. And now, nothing would stand in their way.